All right, and welcome back to another episode of Cinematic Blind Spots. I'm Adam.
And I'm Josh.
And today we have a special guest to interview. Josh, how did you get in contact with us again? I'm not sure. He's the head of social media. He does all the media. I do all the producing, basically.
Yeah, just some of the podcast groups on Facebook.
Okay. Well, we're glad you did. Today we are talking to Christina Bergling, horror author. How you doing tonight, Christina?
I'm good. How are you?
We're doing good. We so tonight I would love to hear a little bit about, your career as an author and how that works, because I myself am working on a story of sorts. I know in your bio it said you've wanted to be a writer since like the age of 4, right? So very long time. Well, I never actually put anything to paper until about 6 years ago. I got an idea for a story, and I was like, well, I don't know how to write a screenplay. I guess I'll write it like a novel. And people were like, no, this is good. Just keep writing it like this. I'm like, okay, I'll do that. But we're also going to be counting down our top 5 favorite Stephen King horror movie adaptations. This was a fun list to put together. See, Josh didn't get the memo. Christina and I, we're both repping the King.
Well, in Monster Squad, one kid wears Stephen King rule shirt, so I'll connect it.
He'll find a way to connect anything. I swear he will.
A couple of degrees of separation it's in there.
That's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but this is 6 degrees of Stephen King.
Exactly.
So, like I said, I'd love to hear more about your career as a writer. Like, how did you get started? How did you, I've always wondered, especially nowadays, how publishing works, because I know a lot of people self-publish. There are options for that particular route. Just tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. Well, I have wanted to write since I was a kid. I have been writing since I was a kid. I started sort of small publishing in college, like literary magazines and online zines, as those were starting to become a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I started my career in tech and kind of got distracted. And it wasn't until I went to Iraq for work and came back that I had my idea for Savages, that I was really driven to write a whole, book-length story.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up finding a writing contest where you submitted your book, and if you placed, you got a publishing contract, and that's how Savages got published the first time.
Cool.
And then that publisher went under, so it's now republished with a different publisher. So publishing is really different than it was when I was dreaming about being an author, and where you would get an agent and you would go to a big publishing house, and now there's a spectrum of options. I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't self-publish, but I don't work with Random House or
Penguin.
Some massive publisher. I tend to work with smaller indie publishers that fall somewhere on the scale in between.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they're handling the editing, the formatting, the cover. They're dealing with Amazon, all the printing of the books and all of that.
Right.
But I still have to do most of the legwork, marketing and promotion-wise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of the middle track.
Okay. Yeah, because I had looked at actually one of the little bookstores we have here in town offers a publishing option. But when I was looking at their options, basically I have to pay them to print the books, and then I have to market the books and sell the books all myself. That seems like a lot for what I'm paying you, or for what I would be paying you.
I draw the line if I have to pay to get published.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of short story submissions where you have to pay to be in an anthology, and that's the line for me.
Yeah, that's
okay.
I don't know. That kind of takes the fun out of it, doesn't it?
I publish for free just to get my name out there,
Mm-hmm.
but I won't pay you.
Right. So what put you down the road to horror?
Yes.
How did you get down that?
I kind of just came out this way. I don't know. I was always drawn to Halloween and spooky stuff. I started in Goosebumps in elementary school, and then
As did
the
I.
second to horror, I just gravitated towards it, and then my writing just went there. I've always been really prone to nightmares, and best way to kind of deal with them was to write them out rather than let them stay in there.
Interesting. I've never heard anyone say that before. Yeah, I'm the oddball out here because I did not grow up with a horror background. Horror movies were strictly verboten in my household. If it wasn't animated, if it wasn't Disney, or if it wasn't something based on World War II, I wasn't allowed to watch it. Yeah, my dad didn't want me watching Scarface, but he'd let me watch Saving Private Ryan all day long.
That's kind of horror.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm really late to the horror game. I mean, we'll talk about this later, but I was introduced to Stephen King through one movie at a very young age, and it wasn't until high school that I picked up one of his books. I think Firestarter was actually the first one that I read. But yeah, I was late to the horror game. I grew up reading like Clive Cussler and Star Wars books, stuff like that. I'm a big sci-fi geek. So yeah, I was going to ask that question of what brought you to horror in the first place. I'm drawing a blank right now. I had another. Do you have another question for her? Like, while I think about what I was about to ask?
I don't know what you were going to ask, but yeah, I'm a lot like you. I started with Goosebumps. Oh, but it took me quite a while to get to Stephen King, though, for some reason. I don't know why. I just wasn't a big reader, I guess. Mm-hmm. It was just, I read Goosebumps, but I didn't read a whole lot of other stuff.
See, I didn't read Goosebumps a lot. I think I read like one or two of those when I was a kid, but when I was in middle school, I got hooked on an author named Paul Zindel. Have you ever heard of him?
I haven't.
He wrote, like, most of what he wrote were like creature features. Like the first one I read, because I love, Jaws is like one of my all-time favorite movies. The first one of his that I read was called Reef of Death. So of course I want to read something that's about monsters under the sea. But yeah, he wrote one that was like basically turned like Stonehenge into a monster location, basically. Pretty interesting stuff. I really enjoyed his books. And I guess maybe that's kind of how I got to eventually to Stephen King. Yeah. It took me a long time before I read It. And really it wasn't until just like the last 5 or 6 years that I really rediscovered my love of his books. He's got a writing style that's just unreal. Yeah. But it was an amazing book. I tore through it in like 3 weeks. And that was a 1,500 page. That particular printing I had was like 1,500 pages.
It's a massive book.
Yeah, it was. It's basically 2 books in one. That's like why they made it into 2 movies. Or how long was the miniseries? Like 4 hours? I can't remember.
A little over 3 hours.
It's a long one.
Yeah.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
It is a long one.
I read that one years ago, so long ago that I don't really remember it now. So yeah, I need to reread that one.
Pretty sure I read Firestarter first, then I read The Shining. I always wanted to read Christine, but I didn't get a chance to until just a few years ago. So, shall we get to our top 5 lists?
Sure.
All right. So, Christina, you are our guest of honor. I'll let you start off with your number 5 all-time favorite Stephen King film adaptation.
So I limited my list to only ones that I actually read the book.
Me too.
Because I've seen a lot more of the movies and the series. But number 5 would be Thinner, which is a terrible movie, but a good adaptation.
I've heard of that one. I think that was on Watch Mojo's list of scary movies that aren't really scary.
Yeah. And there's some parts in the book that were just so unnerving that they tried to capture in the movie and it didn't quite translate. But since I had read the book, it still made my skin crawl. I draw back to how I felt reading it. Like, one guy gets covered in like sores and pimples and stuff, and I could still picture what I pictured when I read it in my mind.
Well, like that. That was kind of my experience with Gerald's Game. See, I read the book before I watched the movie. So by the end, when she finally escapes from her handcuff, I know what's about to happen. But when it finally happens on screen, I'm still going, oh, God. That was
so visceral in the book that even though, like, the adaptation, it's gross and maybe a little traumatic, but the book was just paragraphs upon paragraphs of the is it ungloving? Is that what it's called?
I think so, yeah.
Sounds like a good word for it.
Yeah.
The technical term.
Basically peeling her hand off.
Yeah. Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, yeah. All right, Josh, you want to go with your number 5?
Yeah, with a Rotten Tomato critic score of 15% and an audience score of only 30%. Like Christina said, it's a terrible movie. I thought I was going to be the only one with it, and I also chose Thinner. Now, that being said, I am not familiar with the source material. I actually haven't read Thinner. I was like, I can't go by these guidelines because mine go more towards Stand By Me and Shawshank, and we weren't going. Those are fantastic, but they're not on the horror side, so I left those out. But yeah, I like Thinner. I couldn't, like, you say it's a good adaptation, so I have to go with that. I guess I saw it at the right age to where I still appreciate it even as a movie. I know it's not great, but
It's really creepy. Like the curses are much more unnerving in the book.
Okay. I'll have to add that to my to read list.
yeah.
So for my number 5, I'm sure you have a different version, and it's probably much higher on your list. I am specifically going with the 1997 miniseries adaptation of The Shining.
Okay.
Like I said, The Shining was one of the first Stephen King books I read, and I loved it. So I immediately rushed out and read the Stanley Kubrick, or watched the Stanley Kubrick version, and I was very disappointed.
As we all know, Stephen King was too.
Yes, if even Stephen King was, I can say I was disappointed because even he was. But looking back, I watched it again recently, and like if you remove from your mind that it's a Stephen King book and treat it like it's its own personal entity, it's a very good movie. I mean, Stanley Kubrick visually was just amazing.
It's a brilliant film. It's a terrible adaptation.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I was going for. So on to number 4. What is your number 4, Christina?
I'm going to go with Misery, which is one of my favorite movies.
That was a good one.
But also how it's captured in season 2 of Castle Rock.
Oh, I haven't watched Castle
not
Rock
watched
yet.
Castle Rock.
I've been meaning to watch. So the Castle Rock does a better version of adapting it than the movie did?
No,
Okay.
but it does because Castle Rock kind of approaches Misery from a prequel standpoint.
Oh.
It is like her portrayal is spot on for a young Annie. Like it's creepy. So the two just kind of they go together perfectly.
That's great. I'm going to have to read that one or watch that one. Watch Castle Rock. And I actually have not read Misery. That's why it's probably the only reason it's not on my list.
It's one of, like Stephen King's books where people are trapped places. Like when we get farther up into the list, like those speak to me. Like where the person is stuck somewhere alone, like trapped in a house with a crazed fan for over many winters. Like those ones really work for me.
Do you ever have like fears of, fans meeting your fans or anything like that? And they're like, yeah, I'm your biggest fan or anything like that?
I mean, the internet makes interacting with your fans really weird sometimes. Like I've met people at like horror film festivals and they're like, hey, and they know lots of stuff about me and I'm like, oh, hi.
Yeah, I imagine that would be a little unnerving, yes.
I'm like, this is awesome and scary at the same time.
Multiple emotions at the same time. All right, Josh, what do you got?
Yeah, for my number 4 with a Rotten Tomato critic score of 80% and an audience score of 61%, adapted from the short story 1408 with John Cusack and Sam Jackson. Now, like I said, I think I read the story to this, but I honestly don't remember it that well, but I love the movie. I don't know how faithful it is. I can't speak on that, so.
I showed my daughter that movie when she was 7.
Oh!
Oh!
Nice!
Getting introduced very young to Mr.
Yes.
King.
Yes. I think, well, if you're going to introduce it to it, that's a good one to go with.
Yeah.
I think.
She's very interested in horror, and I have to kind of pace her out. So, 1408 was a nice, like, gateway.
See, I'm not the only one that says gateway horror.
You're right. We did an episode earlier, actually last October, it was a cartoon miniseries from Cartoon Network called Over the Garden Wall. And yes, it is a cartoon, but it is creepy. Like
It is.
even his son,
Yep.
how old was he? Like
He was
9?
nine.
He was 9 when he watched it, and the parts of it still freaked him out. But if you watch it all, it's like 10 episodes, I think. They're about 11 minutes long each. If you watch them all at once, it's kind of like watching a movie. I recommend it.
Yep.
I think it's on Hulu right now, if you so desire. Okay, so for my number 4, having said that I did not care for the Stanley Kubrick version of The Shining, makes my number 4 a little strange because I'm going with 2019's Dr. Sleep, with a Rotten Tomato critic score of 77 and an audience score of 89. I say this is probably one of the most faithful adaptations of a Stephen King book I have ever read. In fact, up until it gets to the very end, like maybe right before the final act of the film, it is just about identical. Like and it's done so in a way that, I mean, to me, I thought it was like just perfectly what I would have imagined in the book. But because it is not a sequel to Stephen King's book, it is a sequel to Stanley Kubrick's movie, they had to change the ending from the book. So, but still, I mean, Ewan McGregor was awesome as Danny Torrance. Like, have you read Dr. Sleep, or have you seen it?
I've seen it.
Okay.
When I watched it, I was like, I need to read the book, because not reading the book, it felt like they shoved a bunch of stuff in the movie. Like, the pace was really, really fast, and I'm like, I can tell they're trying to put all of Stephen King in here because he puts a lot in the book.
Yeah, he does.
And I was like, what else is in here that I need to know, because I haven't read the book.
Right. Like, he has a way, an unbelievable way of connecting his world all together. Because, like, when I read it for the first time and Dick Halloran, a young Dick Halloran, showed up, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the guy from The Shining. And then I read Cujo, and then I read The Dead Zone. Because in Cujo, they talk about the serial killer from The Dead Zone. And by the time I got to The Dead Zone, I'd forgotten about it. But then at one point, they start describing it. And I'm like, it's the guy they were talking about from Cujo. Oh my gosh. I love when he does stuff like that.
You gotta watch Castle Rock, because
I'm sure I would love Castle Rock. I have such a hard time getting myself to sit down and watch new TV shows. It's hard for me to do.
That's just BoJack Horseman.
Well, it took me a while to get into that too. A lot of people were saying I should watch BoJack Horseman. I was like, really? And then, like, after the first few episodes, I'm like, I'm hooked. I love this show. So, moving on to your number 3, Christina.
My number 3 is Pet Sematary.
Which version?
The original is my preference, but I do appreciate how they shocked you with the twist with the new one.
Kind of, yeah. I have something to say about that later.
I'll say it now.
If you're going to surprise them, that definitely surprised the shit out of me in the theater.
Oh, well, then you got lucky, because the problem was they gave that away in the trailer.
They gave away the twist that Gage didn't die, and they killed off Ellie? Oh, Ellie. Yes. They killed off Ellie instead. We both went to see a movie together, and they showed that trailer, and we both looked at each other like...
I think it was Us.
Yeah, we went to see Us, and we were both like...
Yeah.
Because the
trailer, it was great.
Yeah, that's one of the things I have to say about that. But we can get to that later. Josh, what is your number 3?
Coming in with a Rotten Tomato critic score of 90% and an audience score of 89%. You already had it, Misery. I put it on here too. We're having similar lists here.
Misery loves company.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So yeah, I don't think there's much more to be said. You can go ahead.
Damn good movie. So
absolutely.
For my number 3, I chose the 2019 Pet Sematary. Even though they spoiled that ending, just having Ellie come back to life, a little, not a toddler, but a little girl who's, has enough cognizance, if I can talk right, has the ability to actually think, should I be alive right now? I remember being dead. That was so much creepier than Gage ever was. And if they had not given that away in the trailer, this movie would probably be higher on my list.
It was a terrible marketing.
Yes. And you said in a previous episode that the people who made the trailer, like the director's like, well, we're not making this for people who were fans of the original. It's like, but fans of the original are going to want to see it.
And even if they're not, that still happens an hour into the movie. Why would you give away something that far into your movie?
And then in the movie, they still play it up like Gage is going to get killed anyway. So
exactly.
Like, my jaw just dropped because I was like, oh my god, it's not the baby. What is happening?
That would have been my experience. That would have been my same experience. So yes, had it not been for that, 2019's Pet Sematary would be an epically good movie.
Yeah, it would have made my list if it hadn't been for that. So.
All right, so moving on to your number 2, Christina.
My number 2 is It, and I go with the chapter 1 of the new ones. However, I do like all of them because the original miniseries picked out such different pieces of the book than the newer movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the house on Diebold Street didn't even come up really in the original.
Nope.
And we lived in it in the second set of
Yeah.
adaptations. So they're almost like completely separate approaches to the book.
Mm-hmm.
So all 3, with chapter 1 being my favorite.
Good choice.
Oh yeah, well, with a Rotten Tomato critic score of 85% and an audience score of 93%, much higher than your version. This is the Stanley Kubrick Shining.
Now, my version of The Shining didn't even have a Rotten Tomatoes score, so give it a break. It did have like a 6.1 on IMDb.
Not terrible.
Not terrible, but what do you have to say?
Because like you said, I guess because I have now, but I hadn't read it when I seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have that stigma going in that I was expecting one thing and got something else.
Right,
so,
right.
Because I saw the Kubrick version first, I love that version.
That is fair. Now, my number 3.
2.
Oh, sorry, my number 2. I can't talk and I can't count tonight. I think I need to go to bed. My number 2. I'm right there with you, Christina. It, the first chapter from 2017. The miniseries, Tim Curry's Pennywise is iconic, was a great role. But yeah, you're right. It was such a mishmash of things from the book that like were there and then weren't there. And what I liked so much about It Chapter 1 was that it was similar enough that you knew the story, you knew the world kind of, but there was also enough differences to make it its own story. I love the amount of like Easter eggs and things in the background that if you're familiar with the book, you're gonna be like, oh, I know what that is. People who haven't read the book are gonna be completely out of it.
Yeah, we could bring up the turtle without it getting super weird.
Yes.
And we're not floating with the turtle. But
Yes.
we know, hey, here's the turtle.
Yep. When they said, yeah,
There's a turtle.
yeah, when they're like, hey, there's a turtle over there, I went, oh, a turtle, you say? and then he had the little Lego turtle. That was another thing. They did a very good job of updating it for 1989 and modern times. I thought they did a great job for that. All of the child actors did an amazing job, but oh my god, my man,
Yeah.
such a friggin' good job as Pennywise.
So I'm just gonna say this again. You should watch Castle Rock. Third season.
Oh, is he? Pennywise is in the 3rd season. Is it Bill Skarsgård or is it a different?
It's him in the 1st season.
It's Bill Skarsgård. I don't know if he's Pennywise.
Oh, okay.
I can't tell you.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be a spoiler, yeah. Okay, so, moving on. The moment everyone has all been waiting for. Our number 1 favorite Stephen King film adaptation. Take it away, Christine.
Mine's Gerald's Game, because that's my favorite Stephen King book.
Oh.
Didn't see that one coming, but that was very good, yes. Like I said, the film adaptation, I loved how it stayed pretty faithful to the book, too. Like, even up to the Moonlight Man part and all that. I thought that was great.
And they managed to splice that in while still keeping it grounded in just the practical part.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are stuck to a bed. How do you get out of here? It's a very practical problem with this whole supernatural layer.
Yeah.
And they to be able to keep both of them the way they're done in the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought that was very good. Josh, you're number 1.
Yeah, my number 1, you guys have already talked about it. It Chapter 1. When that thing came out, I was in love immediately. Like, The miniseries is good. I love Tim Curry in it. I don't necessarily love everything else. And it's the same reason why I leave It Chapter 2 off. When they get to be adults, it just slows it down for me. So the fact that this all focuses on the kids, I love coming of age stories, and that's what this is, basically. So yeah, for me, It Chapter 1.
My problem with It Chapter 2 was how much they changed. And how much they, like, what they changed from the book to the movie. And, you know, like, the character of Audra was not even in Chapter 2, except for, like, in the very beginning. Like, she even had more of an appearance in the miniseries. What was the abusive husband? Tom?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Tom.
I think it was Tom.
Yeah, like he really got his comeuppance in the book, but never happened in the movie.
No.
So I really wanted that to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, It Chapter 1, all around fantastic movie. So my number 1. It is certainly not the one with the highest Rotten Tomatoes score. It's not even probably his most famous book. It's probably one of his more famous books. But from 1983 with a Rotten Tomato critic score of 69 and an audience score of 63, directed by the legendary John Carpenter. If I ever won the lottery, the first thing I would buy is a 1958 Plymouth Fury, because my number 1 all-time favorite Stephen King movie is Christine. This was my gateway to Stephen King. My dad told me, I think my dad read the book at one time, and then he told me about the movie about a car that had a mind of its own and was evil, and I was just like, whoa. And like he actually rented it from Blockbuster or from someplace, and he would not let me watch the whole thing. He would only let me watch certain parts of it. But that only made me want to see it more.
Right.
I'm like, this is one that I almost wish they would remake, because I was amazed at how similar the book was to the movie, but at the same time there were still differences, and I found out that Stephen King was actually still finishing the book as they were making the movie.
Yep.
I did not know that. But like a lot of the kills, a lot of the deaths in the book are way more extravagant and explosive than they were in the movie. Like Arnie's boss.
I don't know.
I forget his name.
Yeah.
I forget his name. Not right off the top. But like he gets squished by his car seat in the movie. He gets squished up against that's not very exciting. In the book, Christine comes into his house and chases him up the stairs. I would love to see that on a movie. I would freaking love that.
They'd almost have to set it still in the 80s, because if they did it present time, it would be computer driven.
Yeah, like she would still have to be like a 58 Plymouth Fury, in my opinion. You could not make her a different car. Like Stephen King chose that car because he felt like it was a forgotten car. It even had the name Fury. He had Fury in the name. That was the name. And he just thought that sounded like an angry car. So
Very fitting.
Very, very fitting indeed.
I will say, I was going to put Sleepwalkers on this list, but he only wrote the screenplay. It
Right.
wasn't actually based off a book. Otherwise, Sleepwalkers definitely makes my list. All day, every day.
You probably don't know this about me, but I'm a big cat person. So he comes to me one day, I was like, Adam, I got a Stephen King movie you got to watch. I'm like, okay. I'm like, oh, cat saved the day. Yes.
Clovis.
Clovis, yes.
Clovis.
Sheriff Clovis, or Deputy Clovis. Oh, man, that was a great movie. I wanted to put Maximum Overdrive on my list, but I haven't read Trucks. So that's the only reason it's not on here. Otherwise, it'd probably be maybe my number 2. I don't know. Just that scene where that woman comes out of the diner yelling, "We made you!" Like, that's just Oscar worthy. How did this film not win an Oscar? Well, that is going to wrap up our Stephen King top 5. Christina, do you have any social media you like people to follow you on?
I am on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest. You can find everything off of ChristinaBergling.com.
Okay, ChristinaBergling.com. Very good. I'm going to have to check out some of your books, too.
I'm going to have to get them in print, because I'm old school and I don't like digitally reading like on my phone or tablet.
Yeah, like if I can't get an audio book, I do listen to a lot of audiobooks because of my job, but if I can't get it on audio, I don't want to read it on a screen. So yeah, have to get them in print.
Savage is on audio, so you can have it both ways.
Oh, cool. Very good. Very good. And I'm also a voice actor too, so I'll get to critique the the read of it as well.
Perfect.
like when I actually listened to the Dead Zone, and James Franco was the narrator. Now sometimes celebrities can do a good job. This was not one of those times. Half the time he sounded almost like his Tommy Wiseau character from The Room.
Oh boy.
It was like putting me to sleep. Like, dude, you're putting me to sleep in a Stephen King book. How do you do that? Well, as always, you can follow us on all the socials as well. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We'll have links to all of those, or a link to our link tree down at the bottom. But Christina, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. I really enjoyed hearing about your journey as an author. And like I said, I want to read some of your books. And you have great taste in Stephen King movies. I will say that much.
Thanks for having me, guys. It was fun.
It was fun. But until next time, everyone, I'm Josh. I really need to go to bed. Dear God in heaven. I can edit that out.
You've never done that.
I've never done that. I don't know what the hell I was just thinking. Okay, until next time, everyone, I'm Adam.
And I'm Josh.
And always remember, whether you are in your car or in your theater, you're probably not in your theater, you're probably on your couch watching something. Always check your blind spots. You guys stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you next time.